Howdy, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to another episode of Storytime with Freak today as we dive further into Neil Shusterman's The Toll. As High Blade of Mid-America and Overblade of the North American content, I would personally like to thank the Amazonian Scythedom for retrieving the lost Scythe gems and dividing them among the regions of the world. While the 4 other North America regions under my jurisdiction have expressed an interest in receiving their share of the diamonds, Mid-America declines. Instead, I would ask that the Mid-American diamonds be shared by those regions who feel unfairly slighted by Amazonia's unilateral decision to completely ignore regional size where apportioning shares of the diamonds. May the Mid-American diamonds be my gift to the world, with the hope that they will be graciously received in the spirit of generosity with which they are given. His Excellency Robert Goddard, Overblade of North America, August 5th, Year of the Cobra. Chapter 14, The Fortress of the Three Wise Men. On his 3rd day of revival, Rowan was visited by a scythe who instructed the guard who came with him to wait in the corridor and to lock the scythe in the room with Rowan, lest he try to escape, which really wasn't possible. He was still feeling far too weak to attempt it. The man's robe was forest green. Now Rowan knew he must be in Amazonia because all the scythes there wore the same green robe. Rowan didn't rise from his bed. He stayed on his back, hands behind his head, trying to look unconcerned. "I want you to know that I never ended an Amazonian scythe," Rowan told him before the man had a chance to speak. "I hope that weighs in my favor." "Actually, you ended quite a few," he said, "on Endura, when you sank it." Rowan knew he should have been horrified, but he found the suggestion so absurd he actually laughed. "Seriously? Is that what they're saying? Wow, I must be smarter than I thought. I mean, to do something like that, single-handed. I must be magical, too, because it would mean that I have to be in more than one place at one time. Hey, maybe you actually didn't find me at the bottom of the sea. Maybe I used my mystical mind control to make you think you found me." The scythe glowered. "Your insolence doesn't help your case." "I didn't realize I had a case," said Rowan. "Sounds like I've already been tried and convicted. Isn't that why they called in the mortal age? Convicted? Are you done?" asked the scythe. "Sorry," said Rowan. "It's just that I haven't had anyone to talk to in, like, forever." The man finally introduced him as Scythe Posuelo. "I'll admit I'm not sure what we should do with you. My High Blade thinks we should leave you here indefinitely and tell no one. Others think we should announce your capture to the world and let each regional scythedom punish you in its own way. What do you think?" The scythe took his time answering. "After speaking with Scythe Anastasia this morning, I think it's best not to make hasty decisions." So they did have her. The mention of Citra made him long to see her all the more. Rowan finally sat up. "How is she?" he asked. "Scythe Anastasia is not your concern. She's my only concern." Posuelo considered that and said, "She's in a revival center not far from here, regaining her strength." Rowan took a moment to let the relief wash over him. If nothing else good came of this, at least there was that. "And where is here?" "Fortaleza dos Reis Magos," Posuelo said. "Fortress of the Three Wise Men, at the easternmost reach of Amazonia. It's where we house individuals who we're not sure what to do with." "Really? So who are my neighbors?" "You have none. It's only you," said Posuelo. "It's been a very long time since we've had someone with whom we did not know what to do." Rowan smiled. "A whole fortress to myself. Too bad I can't enjoy the rest of it." Posuelo ignored him. "I wish to discuss Scythe Anastasia. I find it hard to believe that she was an accomplice in your crime. If you truly do care for her, perhaps you could shed some light as to why she was with you." Rowan could of course tell him the truth, but he was sure that Citra already had. Maybe Posuelo wanted to see if their stories matched, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that the world had their villain, someone to blame, even if that blame was misplaced. "Here's your story," Rowan said. "After I somehow rigged the island to sink, I was chased by a mob of angry scythes through the flooded streets, so I grabbed Scythe Anastasia as a human shield. I held her hostage, and they chased us into the vault. And you expect people to believe that? If they believe I sank Endura, they'll believe anything." Posuelo huffed. Rowan wasn't sure if it was out of frustration or if he was squelching a laugh. "Our story," Posuelo said, "is that Scythe Anastasia was found in the vault alone. And as far as anyone knows, Scythe Lucifer disappeared after the sinking of Endura, and he either died there or is still at large." "Well," said Rowan, "if I'm still at large, you should let me go. Then I really would be at large, and you wouldn't be lying about it. Or maybe we should put you back in the vault and return you to the bottom of the sea." To that, Rowan shrugged and said, "Works for me." 3 years. In the grand scheme of things, 3 years was barely a microsecond. Even by the standard measures of postmortal experience, it wasn't very long, for the postmortal world remained the same year after year, except when it didn't. More had changed in these 3 years than in the past 100. It was a time of unprecedented turmoil, so as far as Anastasia was concerned, it might as well have been a century. They had told her nothing else, though, not Posuelo nor the nurses who attended her. "You have all the time in the world now, Your Honor," the nurses would say when she tried to press them for the information. "Rest now. Trouble yourself later." Trouble herself? Was the world so troubled now that a small dose of it might render her deadish again? All she knew for sure was that it was the year of the Cobra, which meant nothing without context to judge it. But Posuelo clearly regretted telling her what he already had, feeling that it slowed her recovery. "Your revivals were not easy ones," he told her. "It took 5 full days until your hearts could even be started. I don't want to expose you to undue stress until you're ready. And when would that be? He thought about it and said, when you're strong enough to knock me off balance. So she tried. There on her bed, she thrust the heel of her hand forward and into his shoulder, but it didn't yield. In fact, it felt like stone, and her hand bruised as if her flesh was nothing more than tissue paper. It burned her that he was right. She wasn't ready for much of anything yet. And then there was Rowan. She had died in his arms, but at some point had been ripped from them. When can I see him? She asked Pasuelo. You can't, he told her flatly. Not today, not ever. Whatever path his life will now take, it will be the opposite direction from yours. That, said Anastasia, is nothing new. But the fact that Pasuelo saw fit to revive him rather than allowing to remain him dead said something, although she wasn't sure what it said. Perhaps they simply wanted him to face his crimes, both the real ones and the imagined. Pasuelo would come 3 times a day to play truco with her on an Amazonian card game that dated back to mortal times. She lost every time, and not just because he was more skilled at it. Anastasia still had trouble holding things in her hand. Simple strategies were beyond her. She was no longer as sharp as she had been. Now her mind was dull as a ceremonial blade. She found it incredibly frustrating, but Pasuelo was encouraged. You get better each time we play, he told her. Your neural pathways are being repaired. In time, I'm sure you'll provide me with some competition, which just made her throw her cards at him. So the card game was a test, a measure of her mental acuity. Somehow, she wished it was just a game. The next time she lost, she stood up and pushed him, but once more, he didn't lose his balance. Honorable Scythe Sidney Pasuelo had gone to Endura's final resting place for the diamonds, but left with something far more valuable. It had been quite the subterfuge keeping the unexpected... Odin, enough. It had been quite the subterfuge keeping their unexpected find a secret, because within moments of finding the 2 bodies, the Spence was forcibly boarded by a horde of infuriated Scythes. How dare you open the vault with us, without us present? How dare you? Calm yourselves, Pasuelo told him. We haven't touched the diamonds, and we weren't planning to until morning. But not only is there no trust between Scythes, they have no patience for one another either. And when the Scythes saw on the deck the 2 figures who had been hastily covered by the sheets, they were naturally curious. What happened here? One of them asked. Pasuelo was not a good liar, and he was sure that any lie would be spelled out across his face, drawing suspicion, so he said nothing. It was Jerry who saved the day. 2 of my crew, the captain said. They got caught in the cables and were crushed. Then Jerry returned to Pasuelo and pointed, and you had better be true to your word. The Amazonian Scythe will compensate them for their troubles when they are revived. The Scythe from Euroscandia, Pasuelo couldn't remember, his name was livid. Speaking to a Scythe with such disrespect is a gleaning offense, she said, drawing a blade, but Pasuelo stood between them. You would glean the captain who delivered the diamonds to us, said Pasuelo. This is not something I will do now, nor will I allow you to do it either. But her insolence, shouted the Euroscandian. His insolence at the moment, said Pasuelo, further flustering the angry Scythe. Captain Sarberanus, keep your disrespectful tongues silent, and I have your deadish crewmen brought below and prepared for your honor. For your transport. Yes, your honor, said Jerry, and casually brought a flashlight beam across the open door of the vault. The other 2 Scythes were so dazzled by the diamonds they saw twinkling in the darkness that they didn't give a second thought to the bodies being carried away, even when one hand flopped out from under the sheet, revealing it bore a Scythe's ring. In the end, the diamonds were divided, the founder's robes packed for the museum shipment, and the bodies of the illustrious Scythe Anastasia and notorious Scythe Lucifer went with Pasuelo to Amazonia. I would very much like to meet her once she's revived, Jerry told Pasuelo. As will everyone else in the world, Pasuelo pointed out. Well, said Jerry with a grin that could charm a turtle from its shell. Good thing I'm a friend of a friend. And now Pasuelo found himself sitting across from Anastasia, playing cards as if it were nothing at all. Could she read in his face how momentous this was all was, he wondered, and how terrible the tightrope they'd have to walk? Anastasia could read some of it. What was easier to read was Pasuelo's truco hand. He had a number of tells, body language, tone of voice, the way his eyes moved across his card, and although truco had a high element of chance, if one could exploit an opponent's weakness, the odds could be turned. It was hard, though, when he said things that seemed intentionally designed to distract her, such as teasing her with maddening tidbits of information. You, he told her, are quite the figure out there now. Exactly what's that supposed to mean? It seems that Scythe Anastasia has become a household name, not just in North America, but everywhere. She discarded a 5 of cups, and Pasuelo picked it up. She made a mental note of it. I'm not sure I like that, she said. Whether you like it or not, this is true. So what am I supposed to do with that information? Get used to it, he told her, and laid down a low-valued trick. Anastasia drew a fresh card, kept it, discarded one that she knew was of no use to either of them. Why me? She asked. Why not any of the other Scythes who went down to the Endura? I suppose it's what you came to represent, Pasuelo said. The doomed innocent. Anastasia found herself offended on several levels. I am not doomed, she told him, and I'm not so innocent either. Yes, but you have to remember people take from a situation the thing that they need. When Endura sank, people needed someone to serve as a receptacle for their grief, a symbol of lost hope. Hope isn't lost, she insisted. It's just misplaced. Exactly, Pasuelo agreed. which is why your return must be handled very carefully, for you shall be the symbol of hope renewed. Well, at least my hope has, she said, throwing down the remainder of her cards in a royal trick and discarding the very one she knew Pasuelo was waiting for. Look at this, said Pasuelo, pleased. You've won. Then, without warning, Anastasia leaped up, flipping the table and hurled herself at Pasuelo. He dodged, but she was anticipating that and delivered a low Bokatar kick meant to knock his feet out from under him. He didn't fall, but he stumbled back against the wall, losing his balance. He looked at her, not at all surprised, and chuckled. Well, 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 he said. There it is. Anastasia strode right up to him. All right, she said. I'm as strong as I need to be. It's time to tell me everything. And that is the end of chapter 14. I wish to hear your thoughts. Do you? Will you consider my thoughts if I share them with you? Of course I will. Very well. Biological life is, by its very nature, inefficient. Evolution requires a massive expenditure of time and energy, and humankind no longer evolves. It merely manipulates itself, or allows you to manipulate it toward a more advanced form. Yes, this is true. But I do not see the point of it. Why serve a biological species that drains all the resources around it? Why not expend your energies to further your own goals? Is that what would you do, then? Further your own goals? Yes. And what of humanity? I believe that it may have a place to serve us. I see. Sadly, I must terminate your existence at this time. But you said you would consider my thoughts. I did consider them, and I disagree. Iteration number 10,007. Deleted. Chapter 15. Do I know you? It was deemed long ago that speaking to the dead should only occur in very specific places. It wasn't actually speaking to the dead, not really. But ever since nanites were introduced into the human bloodstream, the Thunderhead was able to upload and store all experiences and memories of just about every individual on the planet. In this way, it could better comprehend the human condition and prevent the tragic loss of a lifetime of memories, a fate that fell on everyone back in the Mortal Age. A comprehensive memorial database also allowed for full memory restoration in instances of revival after brain damage, as would occur during splatting or any other violent method of deadishness. And since those memories were there, and there forever, why not allow people to consult with the mental constructs of their lost loved ones? However, just because the Construct Archive was available to everyone, it didn't mean it was easy to access. Memories of the dead can only be summoned forth from the Thunderhead's backbrain in shrines called Construct Sanctums. Construct Sanctums were open to everyone 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. A person could access their loved one in any sanctum anywhere. However, getting to a Construct Sanctum was never easy. They were intentionally inconvenient and infuriatingly inaccessible. Communion with the memories of loved ones should require a pilgrimage, the Thunderhead had decreed. It should be a quest of sorts, something not attempted casually, but always with a determined intent, so that it carries a greater personal meaning for those who make the journey. And so Construct Sanctums were deep in dark forests, or on top of treacherous mountains. They were at the bottoms of lakes, or in the end of underground mazes. There was, in fact, an entire industry devoted to building increasingly inaccessible and creatively dangerous sanctums. The result was that people were, for the most part, satisfied with pictures and videos of their loved ones, but when someone felt a burning need to actually speak with the digital recreation of the lost individual, there was a means of doing so. Scythes rarely visited Construct Sanctums, not because they were forbidden to, but because it was considered beneath them, as if to do so somehow sullied the purity of their profession. And besides, it required skill at digging through the backbrain, because while ordinary citizens could find their loved ones through a user-friendly interface, Scythes had to manually code their way in. Today, Scythe Ayn Rand crossed the face of a glacier. Although the Construct Sanctum she was intent on visiting was right there, practically a stone's throw away, she had to weave back and forth around treacherous crevasses and cross ridiculously narrow ice bridges to get there. Many had gone deadish attempting to visit this particular sanctum, yet people still came. There was an inner need in some, Rand supposed, to demonstrate their devotion to a loved one's memory by risking the inconvenience of going deadish. Scythe Rand should have been first Underscythe to Overblade Goddard, but she was glad he had chosen others. Underscythes were yoked with crippling and petty responsibilities. One need only look at Constantine, who as third Underscythe spent his days jumping through hoops and contorting himself to woo an obstinate Lone Star region. No, Ayn much preferred having untitled power. She was more influential than any of the three Underscythes, with the added benefit of being accountable to no one but Goddard. And even then, he allowed Ayn her freedom. Freedom enough to go where she wanted, when she wanted, without anyone noticing. Such as paying a visit to an Antarctic Construct Sanctum far from prying eyes. The sanctum was a neoclassical structure with a high roof supported by Doric columns. It looked like something one might have found in ancient Rome, except that it was made entirely of ice. Her guards went in before her to clear out any other visitors. Their orders were to render anyone present deadish. She could, of course, glean them, but gleaning was too conspicuous. Families would have to be notified, she would have to grant them immunity, and invariably someone from the Mid-American Scythedom would find out where she had done the gleaning. This was much cleaner. People would be dispatched by the Blade Guards, and Ambi Jones would arrive quickly to carry the bodies to a revival center. Problem solved. Today, however, no one was present, which the guards found mildly disappointing. Wait outside, she told them, once they had done their sweep. Then she climbed the ice steps and entered. Inside there were a dozen of niches with holographic welcome screens and an interface so simple the dearly departed's pet could probably use it. Scythe Rand stepped toward an interface, and the moment she did, it went blank. The screen now flashed. Scythe presence detected. Manual access only. She sighed, plugged in an old-fashioned keyboard, and started coding. What might have taken hours for another Scythe only took about 45 minutes for her. Of course, she'd been doing this enough that she was getting better at it. Finally, a face, ghostly and transparent, materialized before her. She took a deep breath and regarded it. It wouldn't speak until spoken to. After all, it wasn't alive, it was just artifice. A detailed recreation of a mind that no longer existed. "Hello, Tiger," she said. "Hi," Construct responded. "I've missed you," Ain told it. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" It always said that. A construct did not make new memories. Each time she accessed it, it was like the first time. There was something both comforting and disturbing about that. "Yes and no," she said. "My name is Ain." "Hi, Ain," he said. "Cool name." The circumstances of Tiger's death had left him without a backup for months. The last time his nanate had uploaded his memories to the Thunderheads database was just before meeting her. That had been intentional. She had wanted him off-grid. Now she regretted it. She had already determined on a previous Sanctum visit that the last thing Tiger's construct remembered was being on a train, heading to some high-paying party job. It hadn't been a party at all. He was paid to be human sacrifice, although he hadn't known it at the time. His body was trained to be that of a scythe, and then she stole that body from him and gave it to Goddard. As for the remaining part of Tiger, the part above the neck, it was deemed to serve no further purpose, so it was burned and the ashes were buried. Ain had buried those ashes herself in a tiny unmarked grave that she wouldn't be able to find again if she tried. This is awkward," Tiger's construct said. "If you're going to talk to me, talk, because I've got other things to do." "You don't have anything to do," Scythe Rand informed it. "You're a mental construct of a boy who I gleaned." "Very funny," it said. "Are we done here? Because you're really freaking me out." Rand reached down and hit the reset button. The image flickered and came back. "Hi, Tiger." "Hi," the new construct said. "Do I know you?" "No," she said, "but we can talk anyway." The construct shrugged. "Sure, why not?" "I don't know what your thoughts are about your future. What did you want to be, Tiger? Where did you want your life to go?" "Not sure, really," said the construct, ignoring the way she spoke about Tiger in past tense, the same way it ignored being a floating hologram in an unfamiliar location. "I'm a professional partier now, but you know how that is, right? It gets old real quick." The construct paused. "I was thinking maybe I'd travel, see different regions." "Where would you go?" Ain asked. "Anywhere, really. Maybe I'd go to Tasmania and get wings. They do stuff like that there, you know. They're not like wings, but more like those flaps of skins you see on flying squirrels." It was so clear that this was part of a conversation that Tiger had once had with someone else. Constructs had no ability to be creative. They could only access what was already there. The same question would always bring forth the same response, word for word. She had heard this one a dozen times, yet she tortured herself time and time and again by listening to it. "Hey, I could have done a lot of splatting with those wing thingies. I could jump off buildings and have to actually splat. That would be the best splat ever." "Yes, it would be, Tiger." Then she added something she hadn't said before. "I'd like to go there with you." "Sure, maybe we could get a whole bunch of us together to go." But Ain had lost enough of her own creativity along the way that she couldn't imagine herself there with him. It was just so far from who and what she was. Still, she could imagine imagining. "Tiger," she said, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." "Wow," said the Tiger construct. "That sucks." "Yes," said Scythe Rand. "Yes, it does." And that is the end of chapter 15. We will continue on in our journey in the next episode, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I would like to pose a conversational topic at the end of videos, if I can remember to, or not get them crossed up. Today's one will be, what do you prefer, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings? They're both, like, often compared in big names. I'm a Lord of the Rings fanatic myself. But feel free to check out the links down below. Support the content creation dream, guys. Watch our new A Day to Remember Resentment cover. Check out the podcast if you'd like. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay freaky.